If you're an active and hopeful home buyer in 2021, you have probably had more than one instance in which you have been unable to get your offer accepted. This video is going to help you understand how to strengthen your terms in order to make your offer the most attractive one for the seller to accept. This seller's market in 2021 is nothing like I've ever seen before in my 16+ year career, and those who've been in the business for 50+ years are saying the exact same thing. As a buyer now, your offer is almost more like a resume, and you're just one of the hopeful applicants for this homeowner's position. Your paperwork needs to properly communicate to the seller exactly why you are the best offer to work with. In this video, I will give you several options on how to make your offer stand out, and no matter what your financial situation is, there will be at least one idea here that you can immediately put into play with your next offer. Here's what I'm seeing as a buyer's most valuable terms, and they are listed from most impactful to least impactful, but overall, these are the most impactful terms that you can offer. Term number 1 is the appraisal waiver clause. It's important for you, if you're house hunting right now, to understand that you may be up against an all-cash offer. When a house is sold, the seller's going to get cash in the end regardless of whether the buyer used financing or not, so the only reason a cash offer is so attractive is because cutting out the lender cuts out the risk for the seller. A big part of that risk is the appraisal. For those without enough cash to purchase the home outright, you can gain a big advantage by waiving the appraisal clause that is likely built into your purchase agreement. This means you are telling the seller that you will buy the house even if it doesn't appraise for the purchase price. Most people need to limit this to say that they'll complete the purchase so long as the home appraises for at least X amount, or they say the buyer will pay X amount above the appraised value in the event that the home does not appraise for the purchase price. Appraisals have become a real concern for sellers right now because buyers may be offering prices well above what the comps have sold for. Comps are similar homes that have sold recently, and I cover this in more detail in other videos. The bottom line is that if the comps don't prove that the house is worth the purchase price, then we have a problem unless we have an appraisal waiver. I'm going to lay out an example here and give you 2 different ways to make ends meet. In summary, method 1 involves using extra cash on hand, while method 2 does not. Example is purchase price of $300,000. You're using a 20% down payment, so let's say the lender locks you in at an 80% LTV with a 3% interest rate and no PMI. Your loan amount will be $240,000 and you'll come out of pocket $60,000. So your offer was accepted, now everything's moving forward, now the appraiser comes in and they appraise the house for $290,000. This means that in the eyes of the lender, the value of the home is not $300,000, it's $290,000. So if you want that sweet 3% interest rate and no PMI that they promised you, you will move forward with method 1. You're going to have to put 20% down on $290,000, which is $58,000, and then cover the $10,000 gap to uphold the $3,000 purchase price. So now you came out of pocket $68,000, which is $8,000 more than originally anticipated. That's method 1. And this sounds like a crazy thing to do, right? Well, it's not if you're that buyer who does have the cash and has been searching high and low for the perfect home and has been outbid on 8 other properties over the last 6 months or more. This is sometimes what it takes for a buyer to become open to this option. A low appraisal can be handled in different ways, but we're talking in this video about how to get your offer accepted, not about the most advantageous thing for a buyer to do if the appraisal is low. So let's start talking about method 2. This one does not involve taking more money out of your pocket. Same example, purchase price of $300,000, down payment 20%. Again, the home appraises for $10,000 less than the agreed purchase price. So you do not have the extra money. What you can do in this position is adjust your down payment percentage. Since you have $60,000 that you intended to use as down payment, your best bet in this scenario is to adjust your down payment to 15%. 15% of $290,000 is $43,500, and you need that extra $10,000 to get the $300,000 for the seller. So now you went from using $60,000 to only using $53,500. The side effects here would include potentially taking on PMI and financing more than you originally anticipated. So both these things will result in a higher mortgage payment, but you can limit these side effects in more than one way. For starters, there's a bank by the name of Third Federal Savings and Loan. Third Federal will lend you up to 85% of the value of the home with no PMI. So that's a super easy and attractive fix for the example I've given. If you cannot find a lender who will loan you 85% of the value without including PMI, then you can consider having the lender pay your PMI. This results in a slightly higher interest rate, and I'm not going to break that down too much here, but I will tell you that in every instance where I've weighed out lender-paid PMI versus paying PMI on your own, the monthly mortgage payment with lender-paid PMI has been lower than paying the PMI yourself each month. The flaw here is that while PMI will drop off, the interest rate stays the same. So for just 5% of the value of the home, I would say that the majority of people are better off to pay the PMI themselves, because once you've paid the house down by 5%, you can eliminate it. That's a simple phone call to tell your lender that you're now at a mortgage amount that's 20% less than what you bought the home for. If you are the buyer with 20% down, but you're open to paying PMI for the right house, you should take full advantage of this appraisal clause. You can get a conventional loan with just 5% down, or in the right circumstances, you could do 3% down. To go from 20% down to 5% is a big swing, and that means you can promise much more money towards a low appraisal. The beauty of it all is that when you make your offer with this clause, it sparks this theoretical conversation which forces the worst case scenario into the mix. For the seller of the home, they may never have thought about this. So now they have, and now they're worried, but now your offer takes the worry away. Lastly, if your down payment is going to be 40% or more, your lender may be willing to waive the appraisal completely, in which case you can include this term with no worries about having to adjust down payment or bring extra money to the table. Term number 2, the inspection waiver or repair waiver. It's not super uncommon for a seller to feel like their home is going to pass an inspection without any issues, but experienced agents know that you can never be sure of how a buyer will react to the findings of a home inspection. By the way, have you seen a professional home inspection? Some of these inspections are 80+ pages of intimidating information, and the inspector has to play it safe, so they recommend structural engineers to be brought in to inspect foundation cracks. They want a licensed electrician to make sure that your breakers are properly rated for your breaker box. And they haven't been able to determine if the sump pump is terminating at an acceptable location, so you'll need a licensed plumber for further assessment there. So why did I pay you for a home inspection again? Anyway, home inspections can scare the pants off of a buyer, and many times it is without just cause. In order to waive a home inspection completely, you need to have confidence in yourself and/or your connections in the construction industry. I would not advise this to a first-time buyer who's just moving out on their own for the first time ever. They're not going to waive the general home inspection. Don't do that. I would advise the buyer who's a general contractor to waive the inspection, and I'd advise the one who's getting into their third home to consider it. An easier pill to swallow for buyers is to simply waive the option to request repairs as a result of their inspection. So this way you can move forward with inspections, but your option afterwards is just take it or leave it. You can still decide to kill the deal, walk away with no penalty if you design your contract in this fashion. Proceed with caution on this one. If you're lucky enough that you have a friend or a close relative who's a contractor, maybe you can persuade that person to accompany you for a showing if you're going to go look at something that seems to check all the boxes. Then maybe you can consider this term more comfortably with their assessment. Term 3, the price escalation clause. This has become popular in my area over the last few years, but there are some definite flaws to using this addendum, so that's why it's number 3 rather than number 1. The price escalation addendum gives you a great shot at being the highest offer without overbidding your competition by a fortune. If this is a new term for you, I'll break it down. If you want to use a price escalation addendum, you still make an offer like you normally would. So on your purchase agreement, it says you're offering, let's say, $300,000 for the house. But you have included a price escalation addendum if that number is not enough. The price escalation addendum then says that if a seller has a competing offer that brings a higher net price than your $300,000, this addendum will take effect. It will go on to say that you are willing to beat the competing offer by blank amount of dollars so long as the purchase price does not exceed blank. You will get to fill in the blanks, obviously, with what you feel is appropriate. The seller is also required to show you proof of the competing offer if they utilize this addendum when they accept your offer. I mentioned flaws in this plan, and it mostly comes down to relying on this as your best term. If you aren't offering anything special except a measly $1,000 more than the next highest offer, you still have a good chance that you're not getting this house. In this case, if the next highest offer was waiving inspections or included an appraisal clause, you're out. If they have much stronger financing, you're out. Also, imagine that the next highest offer was $301,000 and you were willing to go up to $310,000, but you were using your price escalation addendum to control how you get there. Well, now you'll be really upset when this house transfers at $301,000 next month. If you had just written your offer at $310,000, then it would have been a lot harder for the seller to pass up your offer. So if you don't have strong terms, do not use the price escalation addendum. Just pretend it does not exist and make your very best offer. When I say very best offer, this means that if your agent calls you and says, "Hey, I'm sorry you didn't get the house," you are immediately at peace with the fact that someone paid more than you were willing to pay. On the contrary, if you do get the house, you should still be excited and free of any feeling of buyer's remorse. No matter how loud I yell this advice into someone's face, upon hearing that they didn't get the house, 9.5 out of 10 people immediately say, "Oh man, what do you think it went for? Is there a chance maybe we could submit a higher offer, maybe like $5,000 more?" And then I need blood pressure medication. Term number 4, personal letter to the seller. This has worked its way down the list to number 4, but it's still here lumped in with the others as one of the best things you can do to improve your chances of having your offer accepted in a competitive market. Most sellers are curious about who they are selling their home to, and oftentimes they have no idea who the buyer is other than whatever assumption they concoct based on seeing your name on the contract. So don't let that assumption control how they feel about you. My advice is to structure your letter in the following way. Introduce yourself, thank the sellers for opening their home and/or providing you this opportunity, compliment the seller's home in some way or in several, and explain what features you are most excited about. Make sure the seller feels they are leaving their home in capable and caring hands. If the seller is still living in the home, your attention to detail within their decor and personal belongings will give you an understanding of what they favor and what they appreciate. So tailor your letter to them and include your personal qualities or interests that you feel that they may appreciate or relate to. If you're a single guy that's going to move into a house with roommates and the seller is a family of 5 that has known this place as home for the last 15 years, your letter should be structured differently than a young couple who hopes to build their family there. You need to be very selective with the information that you provide and focus on. So in this instance, it's easy to say that the young couple has the advantage, but that's not true. The one who writes the letter has the advantage. If both of those parties are competing for the same home and both write a letter, it's still possible for the single guy with his roommates to get the home. That single guy just needs to craft his letter wisely, and I would advise him not to mention his roommates.